I discovered 3 disturbing true AU pair horror stories that will haunt your dreams. I never should have opened that door. My fingers trembled as they hovered over the cold metal handle. Each tick of the clock echoed like thunder in the silence. I could feel the dread pooling in my stomach. Just a peek, I thought. Just a look. I stood in my small, dimly lit apartment, the shadows dancing menacingly on the walls. The air hung thick with a musty scent, hinting at something I couldn't quite place. I was just trying to unwind after a long day of babysitting. My routine was comforting coffee, the soft glow of the lamp, and the faint sound of children's laughter fading into the night. Then came the whisper, barely audible, a shiver running down my spine. I froze. Was someone there? A creak of the floorboards interrupted my thoughts, sending a surge of panic through me. I glanced at the hallway. It was dark. Too dark. Shadows flitted in my periphery, teasing my imagination. I told myself it was just the wind. But my heart raced, pounding against my ribs like a trapped animal. That S when the whispers grew louder. I could swear I heard my name. How could that be? I was alone. I could feel something stirring in the air, something heavy, something wrong. My eyes darted around the room, searching for the source. I grabbed my phone, the light flickering to life, but only revealing more darkness beyond my lonely sanctuary. Suddenly, a loud bang. I nearly jumped out of my skin. The door to the hallway wide open. I hadn't opened it. I felt a chill creep up my spine. Goosebumps prickled my skin as I stepped closer. The stillness was suffocating. I could barely breathe, each gulp of air tasting of cold dread. And then I saw it. A figure. Slim, shadowy, lurking just beyond the threshold. My chest tightened, every instinct screamed at me to flee. But I was rooted in place, a puppet on a string, captivated by the unknown. The figure stood there, unmoving, dark and indistinct, as if waiting for something. My heart raced even faster. Just as I opened my mouth to scream, a whisper floated through the air. My name again, chilling and soft, laced with a promise I couldn't understand. My vision blurred. I was terrified and tethered to that moment. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure shifted slightly, as if swayed by an unseen force. My breath hitched as I locked my gaze onto its elongated limbs, barely able to make out the outline against the moonlit corridor. The stench of decay wafted through the air, heavy and sickening. It felt like a living nightmare, gliding just beyond the veil of normalcy that I clung to. I took a shaky step back, the floor creaking beneath my weight, and that S when the whisper turned into a hiss, a dark cadence that reverberated in my bones. Come closer. The invitation hung in the air, dripping with malevolence. Confusion tangled with terror, and I pressed my back against the wall as I felt something slither through the shadows. More whispers cascaded around me, names, pleas, laughter, all twisted and fragmented. They wrapped around my mind like a fog, suffocating and overwhelming. I wanted to run, to bolt into the safety of the street outside my door, but the light from my phone flickered erratically, casting wild shadows that seemed to dance and morph just like my fractured thoughts. When I dared to glance back, the figure stood nearer, an invisible thread pulling me toward it. I could almost see its eyes, 2 hollow sockets filled with darkness. Help me, or was it, help you? The voices contorted together, warping, pulling my thoughts apart until I no longer knew if I was awake or trapped in some nightmarish waltz. Panic rose like bile in my throat. I took a shaky breath and shouted, "Who are you?" Silence enveloped me, but the air grew colder, thickening like molasses. I could feel the weight of something watching me from the depths of that hollow darkness. The figure stepped forward, its face still obscured. I screamed again, but no sound escaped my lips. Was I truly alone? Because with every heartbeat, I felt it a pulsating presence, a malice lurking just out of sight. Without thinking, my legs propelled me backward into the cramped confines of my apartment. I stumbled, falling to the floor as the light flickered and died, plunging me into a dark void. My heart raced louder than ever, the whispers now a kaleidoscope of laughter and grief, as if they merged into one desperate plea. I scrambled back, pressing my palms against the cool wooden surface of the wall, willing it to swallow me whole. Then came the scratching. Soft at first, just a distant tapping, but then a fervent clawing, as if something was eager to break through. My eyes darted around the darkness, searching for an escape that didn't exist. I could feel the floor tremble beneath me, the walls pulsating as if they had a heartbeat. "Come find me," the voice hissed again, closer this time, and I felt a shiver curl down my spine like a snake wrapping itself around me, tightening its grip. It knew my fears, my deepest vulnerabilities, feeding on my despair. I clamped my eyes shut, counting my breaths, summoning the courage to face the malevolence creeping ever closer, when suddenly a sharp burst of light flooded the room, illuminating everything in a blinding glare. I squinted against the brightness, my heart clawing against my ribs. Standing in the doorway was not the figure I had come to dread but rather a reflection of my own self, a warped version dressed in shadows, mouth twisted into a grin that held no joy, just hunger and lingering darkness. In a moment of paralyzing realization, I understood, I had invited it in. The lights flickered again, before plummeting back into darkness, but I could still see that twisted face grinning at me, its teeth sharp, glistening wet in faint light. I tried to scream but it was drowned out by the cacophony of whispers, each declaring my name in distorted harmony as they reverberated through the room, and then, something cold wrapped around my ankle, pulling me down into the abyss. Desperation clawed at my throat as I struggled, but there was no one to hear me. Just darkness, and the grasp of the unknown tightening every second. As I felt myself drag toward the door, I knew it wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I surfaced from a thick fog, confusion clouding my thoughts. I was no longer in my apartment, but in a room stripped of color and life, walls wrapped in peeling wallpaper that seemed to pulse as if they were breathing. The air felt different here, oppressive and cold, as if a blizzard was brewing within the confines of this wretched space. Shadows slunk in the corners, shapes seeming to quiver with anticipation, and the whispers started again, threading their way into my consciousness, filling it with dread. There was something unsettling about the floor beneath me. It seemed to pulse and shift like the very ground had become sentient, a writhing mass that thrummed with discomfort. I pushed myself up, heart racing as I scanned the room for any trace of my former reality. My phone lay shattered near my feet, flickering erratically like a dying star. "Help me," the voice echoed through the air, a chilling reminder of my tormentor's presence. The figure, my dark self, lingered in the periphery of my vision, a gnarled reflection, always just out of reach. In this ghastly realm between worlds, I felt the weight of something immense pressing down upon my chest, a suffocating plea that begged for freedom. I tried to stand, but the floor clung to my feet like quicksand, murky and alive. "Come closer," a chorus of voices beckoned again, merging as one horrid melody that sent spikes of ice through my veins. I staggered backward, but there was no escape from the intangible tendrils curling around my mind, whispering dark secrets and forbidden truths. Suddenly, a window shattered somewhere in the shadows, and a vile wind rushed into the room, carrying with it the scent of old earth, damp and rotten. Candles flickered to life, illuminating a grotesque tableau of decayed figures standing frozen against the walls, ghostly remnants trapped in agony, their faces twisted in eternal screams that never escaped their lips. I was not alone. They swayed gently, distant echoes of laughter mingling with the rising tide of despair. Their eyes, dark wells of sorrow, turned toward me, pleading for release. Horror coiled in my gut like a serpent, knowing that each of them had been a victim chosen for this insatiable dark hunger, consumed and repurposed as mere shadows of their former selves. "Help us," they whispered in unison, a haunting symphony that filled my essence with chill and grief. They reached towards me, fingers elongated, reminding me of the figure that had lured me into this web of nightmares. I felt the ground shift beneath me as their anguish seeped into my very being. "Get away from me!" I shrieked, but my voice was nothing against the cacophony around me, drowning in the roiling darkness. The figure emerged from that abyss, longer and more grotesque than before, now moving fluidly amongst the tormented souls. My twisted reflection began to stretch far beyond the boundaries of the known, pulling away from the walls and claiming the space between us, smiling as if it knew I would never escape. It stepped closer, and as it did, the tortured souls shrieked in unison, their cries slicing through the air like shattered glass. The walls began to close in on me, squeezing tighter as if the room itself were hungry. I felt my heart racing, pounding against my ribcage as I searched for an exit amidst the swirling horror. "Leave them be!" I screamed, finally finding my voice amid the tide of terror. "I want to be like you." The grotesque figure chuckled, a sound that echoed in my bones. "You already are," it hissed, its eyes glimmering with dark delight. As the walls buckled around me, the ground trembled violently. I stumbled, desperate to escape this prison of despair, reaching out for the door I could barely see at the far end of the room. Just as my hand clasped the icy doorknob, it warped and twisted, becoming a grotesque face contorted in agony, shrieking in silence. I froze in terror, realizing too late that some doors weren't meant to be opened. But before I could withdraw, the malevolent force of the room surged forward, icy tendrils wrapping around my wrists, pulling me deeper into the void. With a final surge of fear, I hurled open the door, ready to face whatever lay beyond. But in an instant, all the whispers and cries were silenced, and I found myself staring into the reflection of the figure, except it wasn't a reflection anymore. It was me, and then I realized what I had truly set free. The door vanished behind me, replaced by an abyss that seemed to pulsate with a life of its own. Instinctively, I turned to flee, but the darkness around me clawed and tugged as if eager to drag me into its chilling embrace. I was no longer in the room. A continuation of that fated reality was slipping away, leaving just me and this endless void. Time lost all meaning in that moment. Unbecoming shapes skittered past my periphery, eyes gleaming with a sadness that felt profound. The absence of sound began to gnaw at my mind, intensifying the unsettling rhythm of my heartbeat as it echoed in the emptiness. Somehow, the weight of those silent watchers crushed harder than the anguished cries of the tortured souls. Suddenly, the darkness began to part, revealing grotesque fragments of broken memories, a child's laughter, a woman's soothing voice, the gleeful chaos of home. Each fragment pulled at my core with a painful familiarity, mocking me as I stood alone, haunted by shadows of those I had loved but lost. I felt my spirit crack, layers peeled away as I stumbled through this transient landscape, glimpses of joy overshadowed by an ever-growing sense of dread. In a void splashed with a sickly yellow light, I caught sight of a figure. Hollowed cheeks, sunken eyes, a woman standing motionless, her arms wrapped around an invisible child. My breath caught in my throat. This was my mother. She looked so real despite the disjointed setting, but the way she swayed slightly, eyes locked on something I could not see, filled me with an unspeakable terror. "Mom?" My voice trembled, slipping into the unfurling darkness. Recognition washed over her face. "Help me, darling, I can't find her." An eerie echo blended her voice with whispers from the shadows, pleading for rescue. It twisted into a haunting lullaby that reverberated in the air, weaving through the folds of my torn panic. I took a hesitant step forward, wanting to comfort her, even if only a ghostly remnant of the warmth I remembered. But the moment I did, her visage dissolved into the air, fizzling into fragments of smoke that coiled and spiraled around me. My heart pounded. What was this nightmare that taunted me with visions of longing, only to snatch them away? Despair clung to me like a noose as I turned, desperately scanning for any glimmer of hope. But as I did, I glimpsed shadowy figures emerging from the depths, their features warped and ravenous. Their hands stretched toward me, reaching with skeletal fingers longing for warmth they knew was no longer theirs. "Join us," they hissed, a cacophony of hushed voices cascaded around me. "Be free." Clutching my chest as a fresh wave of panic overwhelmed me, I stumbled backward and collided with something cold and solid, a wall. Yet as I pressed against it, the surface seemed to breathe, pulsing with the steady rhythm of a heart long dead. The sensation seeped through my skin, warming the icy dread that clawed at my core. "Help us," the chorus intensified. My body shook with fear at the realization they were not trying to pull me in, but rather, trying to escape. I could feel their desperation clawing through time, frantically shaking the very structure of the world around me. "Stop. Just stop," I cried, but the silhouettes only closed in tighter, drawing nearer in a semblance of a grotesque embrace, inviting me into the fold of despair. "I want to become like you." Suddenly, a sound shattered the vibrating waves of anguish, a child's scream, raw and chilling, penetrating the suffocating silence like a knife. My breath hitched, instincts flaring as I turned toward the source. In a swirling tempest of shadows, then came the light, cold and bright, not the warmth of the sun, but a blinding point of revelation against the darkened abyss. There, amid the feasting shadows, stood the tiny figure I had feared I'd never see again, a child, curled in the fetal position, tears streaming down a face marred by echoes of loss. My heart shattered at the sight, pounding against my ribcage, rendering me momentarily breathless. The room had tightened around this tiny being, as if claiming her for its own. "Help her!" I screamed to the souls who hovered ominously, but they only watched, mouths twisted into eerie grins, bearing no desire to intervene. The transformation of their anguish into delight was unfathomable, a grotesque tragedy wrapping around my heart, squeezing the nascent hope from it. But before I could act, the darkness solidified. My dark self was there again, stretching impossibly wide, now almost a reflection of what I might have become, grinning ear to ear with sinister glee. "Join us, she's yours to take," it crooned, extending an arm toward the child lost in shadows. "Become what you were meant to be." I felt the ground quake beneath me as the shadows lunged forward, hungry and voracious. I was faced with a choice I had never wanted. The whispered urgings pricked at my mind as desperation tightened around me, compelling me to take her hand. Just as I thought I could reach out, darkness explored the corners of my eyes, consuming every shred of hope. I felt myself being drawn again, but this time I clung tightly to the belief that I could save her from this horror. Just as I steadied my resolve, the room erupted, with a deafening crack, the walls of the void splintered, and a foreboding presence began to seep into my senses, something dark and formless plunging its icy fingers into the heart of my soul. Then everything went black. I was suspended in a stifling void where the blackness swallowed my senses, plunging me deeper into despair. My thoughts raced, frantically searching for any semblance of reality amid the chaos. The echoes of my mother's desperate plea flickered through my mind. Where had she gone? Where was the child? Breathless, my lungs fought for air, each inhale feeling thick and polluted with the loneliness of a world long forgotten. I could sense a presence, lurking in the corners of my mind, a shadow that both terrified and beckoned me with promises of sorrowful truths. Suddenly, the air around me vibrated, chiming like a skeletal wind chime in an unseen breeze. The echoes morphed into something monstrous, an omnipresent whispering that grew louder and more frantic. "She's waiting, join us, she needs you, come." An image burst forward, shattering the emptiness, a pale child standing alone in an endless sea of fog, her eyes wide and filled with an ancient wisdom that made my heart constrict. I strained to reach her but found my limbs heavy, weighed down by a force that threatened to drag me under. She weakly extended a hand, beckoning me closer, and then recoiled, her sweet voice distorted, a haunting resonance that lingered. "Help us find her, please." She's alone. Images flitted before my eyes, glistening tears sliding down porcelain cheeks, tiny hands gripping at nothing with desperate longing. The vision flickered, and I saw her again, tangled in darkness, her laugh now diminished to a choked sob, a heart-wrenching sound that chilled me to my very core. The ghastly whispers of the shadows swirled around me, growing more insistent, almost rabid, pulling at the edges of memory I was hesitant to explore. I could feel the weight of every soul that had lost its way, each one a thread connecting me to a dark history I never wanted to relearn. "Free us," they murmured, pain threading through their confessions. "You are the bridge to what?" I screamed, the walls of my reality quaking. The darkness seemed to sway, embracing my quivering form. It felt alive, hungry for my fear. I squeezed my eyes shut, attempting to shut out the whispers, but suddenly, the atmosphere thickened like a dense fog. An unseen force dragged me forward, and before I could grasp what was happening, I was thrust into a clearing steeped in shadows. Before me stood a grotesque altar constructed from twisted limbs and fragments of memories, details of lives snuffed out too soon. Atop it lay the child, eyes closed and surrounded by a minuscule tremor of light that flickered like a dying firefly. A sharp chill swept through me, twining with the familiar warmth deep within my heart, my own fear of losing her again. The shadows formed into a swirling vortex, undulating and pulsating, the cries for unity growing louder. "Join us, she needs you." To complete the circle in that instant, I was overcome with a paralyzing understanding. The child and I were linked, entwined in a dance of despair that could culminate in salvation or ruin. But the hesitance gnawed at me, tugging at my spirit like the shadows wanted to. If I embraced it, what would remain of my humanity? Seconds felt like hours as I hovered on the precipice of choice, my mind a battleground of conflicting desires. Just as I resolved to step closer, the shadows erupted, swirling with joy as I fell deeper into their embrace. Hunger clawed at me, thick and intoxicating, as I faced the decision I had tried to escape, but then a roar pierced the cacophony, erupting like thunder from the very ground beneath my feet. The child jerked awake, her eyes piercing through the darkness, haunted yet alive. A primal fear gripped me when I realized who had awakened. A dark specter, a conglomeration of the very souls I had seen, loomed behind her with a massive, formless shape, tinged with madness and rage. "No!" I screamed, knowing the true depth of my betrayal. As it lunged toward the child, my breath caught, a flash of light flickered and exploded, blinding me as my world collapsed into chaotic shadows, engulfing the last remnant of hope. And just as darkness engulfed me entirely, a chilling whisper echoed in my ears, the voice unmistakable, the luring promise of acceptance flashing through the turbulence. "Join us, and never be alone." Everything went silent. The silence was enveloping, heavy as a shroud, and I floated in that void of blackness, a marionette cut from its strings. My heart pounded against my ribs, an insistent reminder of my existence in a world where I truly felt I had none. The comforting warmth of the child's presence had been snuffed out, replaced by an overwhelming sense of dread that prickled my skin and turned my thoughts into a chaotic storm that I didn't know where I was or if I was even alive. The absence of sound weighed upon me, wrapping around my throat like a serpent, suffocating any flicker of hope that remained. I clawed at the darkness, yearning to break free, when I felt a pulse emanate from somewhere deep within. It resonated with a fearful familiarity, igniting a trembling spark in my chest that begged to be unearthed. As I turned that thought over, the silence shattered, the whispers returned, pressing in from all sides, each one weaving tales of sorrow and lost hope. "Help save the child." The price. Instinctively, I gripped my head and squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the maddening clamor, but their sorrow intermingled with my thoughts, invading my very being. They were desperate, clinging to me as if I were the tether that could pull them back from the brink of oblivion. Suddenly, with a jolt, I was amidst the altar once more, the grotesque assemblage of limbs and shadows breathing around me like a living being. The musty scent of decay assaulted my nostrils, and I stumbled back, my heart racing as I scanned the obsidian forms roiling at the edges of the clearing. Each shape morphed into fleeting images of those I had lost, faces etched with grief, memories that almost felt tangible, beckoning me to remember. But the child, where was she? The flickering light was fading, a weak heartbeat now oscillating within a cold grip of darkness. "You must choose." The whispers coiled tighter around me, seductive in their insistence. "You must free them to save her." Terror seized my limbs, and I hesitated, trapped as I was in their oppressive hold. What would freeing these souls entail? The darkness pressed closer, as if waiting for my answer, hungry for my acceptance. Then, through the miasma, an outline emerged, not the child, but a figure cloaked in black, hunched over the altar with sharp, skeletal fingers tracing the air above the lifeless form. This new presence spoke not with words but a guttural growl that vibrated through my bones. The shadows surged forward, dancing in chaotic delight, as if they were coaxing a hidden horror into existence. Mine to keep, it hissed, and I could feel the craving in its essence, a hunger that pulsed in time with my own fear. A portal of swirling darkness opened beneath the altar, the edges fracturing reality itself, twisting and bleeding into a realm I could not fathom. That I called for the child, my voice swallowed by the all-consuming darkness, and as I shouted her name, a figure flickered into existence next to the altar, a face framed in shimmering light, features etched deep with anguish that mirrored my own. "Help me," she cried, her voice a thin silk thread weaving through the shadows. With every pleading syllable, I felt the weight of the world bearing down on her frail form. The predator that stood between us recoiled slightly, startled by the gravity of her plea, and I sensed this was my moment, my chance to break free of this malevolent grasp. "Let her go!" I roared, fueling the words with every ounce of desperation I could muster. Shadows writhed in response, the thin veil between life and death trembling dangerously. The ghostly figure unfurled her arms, yearning toward me as though I were her lifeline. "You have to make the choice," she whispered, her eyes shimmering brightly despite the shadows that threatened to consume her. It all converged at that moment, the whispers, the darkness, the choices looming ahead. The shadows deepened, morphing into a tempest of anguish around us, torn between the haunting call of those trapped in torment and the glowing pulse of life that was the child. Before I could respond, a deafening roar erupted from the edges of reality as the shadows recoiled, shrinking away into the depths of malice behind the altar. Just as I felt myself move forward, propelled by instinct, dark tendrils seized tight around my extremities, dragging me back. "Release them," I gasped, wrestling against their constriction. "Let them go." But then the child's feeble light flickered one last time, illuminating the shadowed figure, revealing a face I had never expected, my own, twisted in agony, grinning with a horror I could not understand. Then everything collapsed around me, as I was swallowed entirely into the darkness once more. "Join us," echoed through me, vibrant with an unsettling certainty, and I felt the walls begin to close in. The realization hit my gut, churning in a wave of despair as I understood the choice would be mine to make again. But this time, I would not be alone. And in that creeping silence, I heard the faintest sound behind me, a child's laugh that sent icy shards of fear slicing through my heart. The laughter reverberated through the suffocating darkness, like the echo of shattered glass in an empty hall. It was a joyful sound, yet it pierced my soul with its haunting familiarity. I spun around, desperate for a glimpse of its source, but as I turned, the weight of despair sank deeper into my chest. The shadows swirled, obscuring the memory of the light I had witnessed, the faint glimmer of hope that had just started to blossom. "You're going to lose her," a voice hissed from the swirling abyss, grinding against my resolve. The sound sank into the corners of my consciousness, tightening its grip around my neck. "Join us, let the child join the darkness." The shadows writhed as if they were alive, crawling closer, eager to drown out any remnant of light. I stumbled backward, fighting against the brooding presence that sought to engulf me entirely. Panic licked at my heels as I frantically scanned the void for the child, my heart echoing her name in the silence. "Where are you?" The laughter returned, this time more distinct, layered with an undercurrent of sorrow that twisted my insides. It resonated like a forgotten lullaby, reminding me of warm embraces and summer afternoons, but now, it felt tainted, corrupted by fear. Alongside that twisted melody were the whispers, urgent, insidious, wrapping around my thoughts. "Join us, save her, be free." Then, a flicker of movement caught my eye. The flickering essence of light began to weave through the shadows, and I moved toward it instinctively. The guiding warmth radiated like a beacon through the suffocating dark, nourishing hope where despair had taken root. But as I approached, I felt the familiar pressure band around my heart, a warning that this light was like all others, beautiful yet dangerous. "Please, come play with us," the child's laughter beckoned once more, layered with echoes of the lost souls surrounding us. I felt the ground beneath me shift, splitting into multiple paths, each marked with despairful faces watching, waiting. It's not far now. You just have to follow the light. That's not real, I shouted into the yawning darkness, my voice trembling as the words felt like a fragile shield. You're not real. You're not her. And yet, the laughter persisted, wrapping its chilly fingers around my mind, imploring me to move closer to the flickering light. As I stepped forward, a sudden rush of wind swept through, tugging at my clothes and chilling me to the bone. The shadows recoiled but surged once more, growing greedy, reaching hungrily for my heels. What must I do to save you? I shrieked, desperation tinged with muffled terror. My breath was lost to the oppressive silence that followed, each heartbeat echoing like a war drum in the void. Choose, the specters wailed, their voices clashing against one another, a cacophony that surged and receded like the tide, swirling around me with cold, mocking urgency. Release us. The child's laughter will be your end. Release us. The child's illuminated form flickered with uncertainty, her features shifting like a mirage. You have to choose, she murmured, her voice now cracked and heavy with sorrow. You can't let them win. They want you to betray me. As I hesitated, torn between her and the wailing souls clawing at my sanity, the shadows closed in again, tightening their grip. I felt the searing pain of loss, the weight of a million memories pulling at my soul, a desperate chorus of anguish that drowned out all reason. The choice had always been inscribed in the fabric of my existence, a dark premonition that now solidified with terrifying clarity. The light flickered in dizzying patterns, nearly snuffed out beneath the pressure of the darkness, and something deep within me screamed in revolt. You have no power here. I bellowed, each word echoing louder than the last, pushing back against the encroaching despair. The shadowy tide recoiled as if struck, but in that instant of clarity came a new horror, a shattering realization that sent ripples of icy fear racing down my spine. The shadows twisted and warped, pulling apart, to reveal a horrifying scene that played out before me. Figures surged in through the darkness, lost souls entangled in gnarled tethers, faces contorted in desperation, hands reaching as if to grasp me. Their gazes were hollow, vacant, yet filled with an unnerving longing. It was a chorus of despair that resonated in my marrow, pulling me deeper into their world of suffering. Save us, they rasped, voices overlapping in manic harmony. The child is the key. Save us, and the child will live, or join us in our torment for eternity. In that moment, it hit me like a blast of ice-cold air. These were not just the anguished remnants of the dead, they were a reflection of my own tortured decisions, echoes of my past choices, the weight of my sins. They were bound to me, and their pain flowed deep within, but before I could respond, the child's laugh rang out again, sweeter yet more unsettling, a siren's call that urged me deeper into the murky depths of despair. The light dimmed, flickered, and then exploded into a constellation of shimmering particles, momentarily blinding me. With clarity amidst the chaos, I made my next step forward, but it wasn't toward the light. My instincts drove me to break through the twisted tether of shadows, pushing past the emotional weights that had pinned me in place. I had to save her. Suddenly, I felt a sharp tug at my heart, a vicious grip that threatened to sever my connection to her completely. The shadows contracted violently, the air vibrating with their fury. No! You can't choose her. Then the darkness split open, revealing not just shadows but a gaping maw, an ancient void that pulsed with grotesque energy and hunger. I could feel the child's presence winking out, the tether between us weakening with every heartbeat, and I screamed her name as the light started to drain away, the whispers crescendoed into a terrifying symphony of madness. No escape, no escape, and as I lunged forward one last time, the darkness roared, enveloping everything in an oppressive wave as I plummeted into its unyielding depths. Then one voice rose above the cacophony, hauntingly clear, "You should have listened, and just as I thought all was lost," the brilliant light surged back to life, a small flicker igniting the all-consuming dark. But in that moment of clarity, I realized, with the child's freedom comes a cost. I was not prepared for what was revealed next. A reflection of myself, no, the twisted version of myself standing behind me, grinning with inherent malice, eyes glimmering with an eerie hunger. "Do you really think you can save her?" It mocked, the very essence of darkness pouring from every word. The walls began to close in, the laughter erupting into manic joy as shadows reached desperately for me, merging together. A fracture split my thoughts, and as the last flicker of light disappeared, I heard the child's voice fading softly into the void, "Where are you?" And in the abyss, the sinister smile of my other self widened, revealing teeth stained with the shadows of my fears, whispering, "They're all mine now." The silence stretched out, heavy and suffocating, as I stood there paralyzed, staring into the monstrous reflection of myself. It was as if the darkness had sculpted a perfect effigy and embodiment of every doubt, every guilt I had ever felt. Its grin twisted in delight, sharp and insatiable, while within its hollow eyes lay the promise of despair. "Join us," it purred, the sing-song quality of its voice sending a shiver down my spine. "It's so much easier to give in. Just a little taste, and you'll see the truth. The darkness doesn't need to consume you. It can be your friend." Suddenly, the ground beneath my feet trembled as if acknowledging the truth buried in the words. The wails of the lost souls around me intensified, mixing with the child's fading laughter, creating a hypnotic dissonance that threatened to draw me under. I took a step back, my heart pounding furiously in my chest. "No. You're not real," I shouted, but deep inside, the doubt whispered back. What if this shadow was the truest part of me, and the child merely a fragile echo? "Is she real?" it asked, tilting its head as if intrigued. "Or just a figment, a sweet memory you cling to because you cannot face the darkness that resides within?" With every breath, the child's voice weakened, replaced only by my reflection's insistence. The darkness grew thick with certainty, thick enough that I could almost taste the corruption, a sickly sweetness tainted with bitterness. But somewhere within the maelstrom of fear and temptation was my resolve, a thread of defiance I clung to like a lifeline. "I want to let you take her. I want to be like you," I shouted, but the words felt weak against the tide. "No. You already are," it sneered, its grin widening even more. "You think you can save her? You're already shackled by your own despair, it's only a matter of time before you succumb. Just one little choice, one slip back into your old realities, and everything will be easy again." As it spoke, the shadows surged, gathering around its form in a thick cloud of swirling shapes and faces, echoes of my past mistakes and failures, all weaving back into the darkness. I turned to see them, familiar yet grotesque, the remnants of dreams long extinguished swirled around me, suffocating, clawing for a way back into the light. "Look at them." My shadow version laughed, gesturing to the faces embodying my regrets. "They want you, you know. They're waiting, always waiting, ready to drag you down into the abyss you fear. Join them, and I'll give you what you want. You can be free from her cries." In a moment of inexplicable clarity amidst the chaos, I took a step forward, pushing against the tide of bitterness and pain. "You're lying. I can't trust you. I don't want your freedom if it means losing her." My breath came in ragged gasps, adrenaline coursing through me as I fought against the overwhelming surf of despair that sought to engulf me. Suddenly, a flicker of light broke through the shadows, illuminating a path that twisted between the looming phantoms. Hope surged as I recognized her silhouette at the distance, but that hope also came with terror, the shadows around her swirling with insatiable hunger. "Help me." Her voice cut through the abyss, a frantic plea that ignited a fire within my heart. "Come back to the darkness." The shadow of myself spat, reaching out with a clawed hand. The world around me shook, the very fabric of reality quaking as I dared to take another step. "You're better here, you understand that, don't you?" "No." I screamed, shaking my head furiously, feeling the thrumming energy of my heart beat louder than the cacophony surrounding me. With newfound determination, I lunged towards the flickering light, my mind racing. I could almost feel her warmth wrapping around me, an embrace that promised safety and solace, but as I lunged, the darkness convulsed and roared in fury, enveloping the child in a cold grip. "You dare defy me?" It lashed out, shadows twisting violently, a monstrous manifestation of rage and despair erupting around me. From the depths, a scream reverberated, a sound not just of anguish but betrayal, piercing through my mind. It was her voice mixed with every soul it had claimed. "You can save me. Please." The ground beneath me split open, revealing a deep chasm that pulsed with malignant energy. I teetered at the edge, fighting against the pull of the abyss that sought to swallow me whole. It was then I felt the fracture split within myself, the shadow yanking with all its might, clawing at the weak threads of my resolve. "You will never escape me," it thundered, as the light from the child dimmed, the laughter fading into the shrieks of sorrow overlapping. Desperately, I glanced back, the child's figure flickering hopelessly in the shadows, a manifestation of innocence trapped between realms. The strength of her gaze tugged at my heart, a lifeline amidst the torment. "Make your choice," the shadow urged, its thundering laughter ramming against my resolve. But before I could reply, the ground heaved beneath me, and suddenly I was slipping, the chasm yawning wider, pulling me into darkness. The haunting laughter ricocheted in my skull, mocking every decision I'd made, every step forward. As I screamed her name, I fell deeper into an inescapable void, hearing her voice merge with the souls surrounding me as they echoed, "Where are you?" And then the piercing silence closed in again, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket, a sinister calm rising in the aftershock of my fall. I was met with one final vision, a single light pinprick hanging in the emptiness ahead, struggling persistently against the encroaching black. But as I reached out, a new horror unfolded before me, a chilling realization winding itself through the ether. The light flickered not with hope, but with something darker, a warning, and within that norm-shattering moment of clarity, I grasped that I was not just fighting for her salvation, but warding off the sinister corruption that spun through my veins, screaming to reclaim the parts of me long dead. In that moment, the whispering began anew, foreboding and sinister. "You can never escape us." And I knew no matter how hard I fought, I was trapped in a dance I could never hope to win, for the shadows were not just around me, they were awakening within, silently waiting for their chance to claim me completely. The light that flickered before me pulsed with an unsettling rhythm, transforming from a beacon of hope to a harbinger of dread. Each shallow, labored breath filled my chest with an icy pang as the silhouettes of countless faces warped and writhed in the surrounding shadows. They seemed to beckon, whispering deeply buried secrets about the choices I had made, the family I had failed, and the child whose laughter had become a memory crying for rescue. "Please," I gasped, my voice almost swallowed by the suffocating darkness swirling menacingly around. "I only need to save her." Yet, as soon as the plea escaped my lips, the sinister laughter erupted around me, bitter and echoing. "Save her? What makes you think you can save anyone? You're the one in need of salvation, trapped in your own mind." The shadows swirled viciously, mocking me with their dance as they forged upward in long, sinewy tendrils. With every heartbeat, the chilling realization struck deeper. The swirling abyss mirrored my innermost fears, each face drifting nearer, each one taunting with the memories I wished to bury, my failures, the time I had let my loved ones down, how my carelessness had ripped the family apart. I saw my sister, her face twisted in sorrow, and another, a friend whose life had been lost because I wasn't there. The darkness seemed to lap up their anguish, as if savoring every morsel of guilt it could find within me. "Join us," they whispered, laced with sweetness yet brimming with malice. "Embrace the darkness, it's what you've always wanted. No more pain. No more choice. No." I shouted, shaking my head as desperation coursed through me, a plea for freedom pulling at my core. "You're not real." But as their empty eyes gazed upon me, I felt the strength of that declaration waver beneath the weight of their collective anguish. The blackened maw of despair yawned wider, a pit I might willingly tumble into rather than face the truth roiling inside of me. Then I remembered her, the child whose joy had ignited a light within me that refused to flicker out despite the shadows clawing. Through the blanket of chaos enveloping me, I focused on that distant flicker, still fighting to break through, though now it also felt like a spectral apparition of what I had lost. As I concentrated, images morphed before my eyes, visions of laughter, warmth, innocent curiosity. Hope surged anew against the encroaching darkness. "Hold on!" I cried, my voice cracking against the suffocating silence, desperate to bridge the void betraying us both. "I'm coming." From the depths of the void came an answering call, weak but unmistakable. "Help me. Get me out of here." Yet the child's voice now echoed through the lies of regret, becoming an irresistible song sung by the shadows. "She's gone. You let her go, and now she's paying the price for your failings. Why fight for her when you could just embrace the truth that you are unworthy of saving?" "No," I thought fiercely, clenching my fists. "I will not let this wretched existence twist my heart any longer. I will not be left empty and hollow." I lunged forward, but the chasm began to shift and tremble as however briefly the light seemed to grow. I felt something beneath me snap, unhinging a vast tidal wave of darkness rushing to blanket any flicker of luminescence that my foot slipped and a jolt shot through my body before I plummeted. Shadows snaked around my limbs, grasping like skeletal fingers, ready to draw me deeper into oblivion. Suddenly, I was plunged into a freezing void, the air sucked from my lungs, drowning me in sheer fear that I flailed instinctively, drowning in terror as ichor-like tendrils grasped me, pulling me down to where prayers and screams turned to whispers, where every inch of my skin burned with a maddening chill. The faces of remorse melted into an awful tapestry of betrayal, urging me toward oblivion while the child's cry for help became a mere echo beneath the overwhelming weight of hopeless despair. In that moment of suffocation, a name slipped from my lips, the name of the child, a lifeline against the abyss. And that pulse of recognition ignited something deep within, crystallizing my resolve anew. "I will fight. I will save her." I screamed, forcing myself up, flailing, clawing at the shadows trying to swallow me whole, and there, as I clawed my way back, a rip in the void opened above me, a shaft of blinding light erupted through the encroaching darkness, illuminating the visions of the lost. The shadows recoiled, shrieking, but the path was unclear as the light flared anew. Then came the voice, soft yet distinct, piercing through the cascading echoes that sought to drown me. "Please," it echoed again, and though it was her voice turning ragged in sorrow, it was stronger than before, laced now with a ghost of defiance. "I need you, find me." With one last surge of strength, I lunged toward that blinding light, casting aside every whisper of doubt, every memory steeped in regret. As I reached for it, something cold wrapped tightly around my wrists, pulling me back, surprising me with an unfathomable force. And in that instant, I felt the warmth slipping from my fingertips, the laughter fading as darkness closed in around me like a vice, and with it came a horror more profound than despair that I shattered against the brink, knowing I had failed, the shadows consuming the last remnants of my hope. But then a horrifying realization cascaded through me, rushing like icy water. I was no longer falling into darkness, I was rising, becoming it, my fears twisted into something grotesque inside my soul, awakening the very corner of my being I had tried to forget, and as I transcended, I heard the last desperate plea, "Where are you? Don't leave me." With the shadows forming a body around me, I realized with dread there was no return. I was bound to them, a part of this malevolent tapestry of despair, and now I was responsible for another soul hanging in the darkness, no longer seeking rescue but fading into the night. A laugh echoed from within. "Welcome home." As the cacophony of spirits howled around me, I screamed, but the shadows enveloped me completely, trapping me in their embrace. And then it came, a voice low and haunting, wrapping around the last vestiges of light within me. "You've finally found your true self. All that's left now is to join the dance." And as reality shattered around me, a terrifying question echoed hauntingly in my mind: how many souls would I have to save before it was too late, and how many would I lose to the darkness that danced in my own heart? The answer loomed, suffocating, nearer than I realized, and the flicker of light I once cherished dimmed once more, this time, beyond the reach of my grasp. The frigid air curled around me like a serpent, constricting my chest, clawing at my throat as despair settled heavily upon my soul. I stood in a realm of swirling shadows, a reflection of my own inner turmoil, each pulse of darkness pulsating like a heartbeat, echoing with the whispered names of those I had failed. The child's laughter had dimmed, replaced by the haunting whispers of countless souls intertwined with my fate. "You've unleashed a darkness you cannot control," they murmured, voices barely a chorus, blending into a symphony of sorrow that suffocated me. "The dance has begun, and there is no stopping it now." I had thought that I could save her, that I could pull her from this abyss, but now the shadows felt more familiar than my very own skin. They thrummed with an insatiable hunger, clawing and pulling, each wisp of darkness a reminder of the tenuous grip I still held on to my last shreds of humanity. And with every pulse of the darkness, I felt the lines of my identity begin to blur. And there she was again, the flicker of light that had once brought warmth to my heart, barely visible amidst the encroaching void. The child, now only a shadow of the form I recognized, appeared chained to the very source of anguish that surrounded me, her image flickering like an ember ready to go out. "Help me," she gasped, her voice ragged, slashed by waves of torment. "You promised." Tears spilled down my cheeks as I reached for her, fighting against the tendrils of darkness that dragged at my limbs, anchoring me to my own demons. "I will not abandon you," I shouted, igniting a flicker of defiance within. Light surged through me, a fiery core against the cold void attempting to consume all that I was. Yet as I began to move toward her, the darkness recoiled as if painful, swirling violently and hissing with ire, its rage weighing heavily upon my heart. "You cannot save her. She belongs to this realm now, just as you do." The shadows wrapped tighter around me, each wisp whispering twisted truths that clawed at my consciousness, drawing on my deepest fears. Guilt rushed forth, flooded in memories I could no longer ignore. Faced with moments I had tried so desperately to forget, the echoes of my family haunted me, their eyes filled with sorrow and regret. "You're the one who left her," they echoed. "You are bound to us now, you have fed the darkness. You let her slip away." "No," I screamed, tearing through the fog, fighting against the pull of despair and guilt that bound me. "This is not the truth." I tremble in the shadows, not because I choose to embrace them, but because I must reclaim my light. As I pressed onward, precariously toward the flickering light that was the very embodiment of hope, I felt a shift beneath me. The ground heaved violently, the darkness writhing like a living thing. It sank into a chasm filled with anguished cries, my reflection twisted amidst the sorrowful faces of those I had lost, as if I was trapped in a maze of memories and regrets. "Join us, join her," the voices chanted, a captivating song that drew me closer to the brink. "You will never be whole without accepting what you truly are." In that moment of sanity, clarity struck me. The shadows had laid their trap, weaving tales of my regret into reality, but as fear gripped my heart, so did the memory of the child's smile, the laughter that had once filled my days. Every ounce of yearning flooded my soul, a reminder of purpose reigniting like embers in the abyss. "I don't belong here," I exclaimed with renewed conviction, pushing against the whispers as they howled in fury. "I choose to fight. I will stand against this darkness and save her. Even if I am bound by grief." As I screamed her name, that flicker of hope illuminated the shadows around me, the light growing brighter as I stepped through the despair. Suddenly, the swirling shadows began to part, revealing a pathway bathed in light, illuminating the child's figure once more, cradled within a cocoon of warmth. "You found me," she whispered, eyes sparkling, hope teetering on the edge of salvation. And it was then I realized the horrifying truth. It wasn't simply the shadows that sought to consume me. They had always been a part of me, merging with my essence in the depths of despair. And those haunting reflections were not merely taunts, but pieces of me, each loss reflected in the faces of those around. As the darkness surged, I turned to the flickering figure. "I will not give in," I cried. "I choose you. I choose love over despair." The shadows shrieked in outrage, the rage igniting into a storm as I reached for the child, the ground trembling as our fingertips barely grazed one another, the light pushing through the cracking in the darkness. But the contrast screamed painfully as the shadows clawed at me, dragging me back. "You cannot escape fate. You will be absorbed with the darkness. There can be no light without despair." But I held firm, pushing against the suffocating weight, and as I did, something within me shattered, glowing brilliantly, a conduit of otherworldly energy erupting like a supernova between us. The shrieks crescendoed, blending into a roar that threatened to drown me, yet I closed my eyes, envisioning all the lost souls, the child, and the love I wished to reclaim. In that moment of clarity, the shadows began to lose their grip, the light surged, drowning out their cries, and as I reached for the child, I felt her small hand clasp mine, warmth enveloping me like a blanket. Instantly the scream of darkness transformed into whimpers, wrapping around us, desperate to pull us back into the void. But it was too late. I felt energy surge through me, a brilliant flash erupting as the shadows dissolved, banished into a realm of forgotten grief, shrieking in agony, a final awakening to reveal a sinister truth. Forever bound to your darkness was the last whisper, a mere echo as the abyss cracked open, retreating to reveal blinding light. As warmth suffused the space around me, I grasped the child's hand tighter. Yet as the light began to envelop us, a chilling realization seeped into my chest like ice: choices made are not always forever unmade. In the thrill of victory, the haunting murmurs of what had been flickered in the corner of my mind, and I knew, light had emerged, but darkness would forever linger. In that moment of triumph, the truth struck hard and resonated with undeniable clarity. What you save will thrive, but shadows never truly leave, a voice declared hauntingly, echoing a warning as the world around us shifted. Just then, I sensed a familiar warmth cling to me, slicing through the remnants of fear, but something lingered beneath, tangled in the threads of my being. And finally, chillingly, the child whispered, staring deep into my eyes, "We will always be together, both light and shadow." In that final realization, I felt like a marionette whose strings had been torn. I was both the savior and the lost, forever intertwined with the shadows that lingered, even as I walked toward the light. I would carry the weight of my choices eternally, haunted by the fact that every light casts a shadow, and with a chilling certainty, I understood escaping the darkness never meant it would vanish from my soul. And so, I turned to the child beside me, a smile forming, but felt the icy grip of the lingering shadows linger just beneath the surface, a reminder echoing persistently in my mind: you are never truly free.